Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Weiser in for Vladimir Duthier. We're watching all the news happening in the U.S. and around the world. Here's a look at the top stories we're following for you this morning. A manhunt is underway in Kentucky for the man suspected of opening fire on cars on a busy highway. What authorities are saying about him and where he could be. A dangerous heat wave and high winds are fueling a massive wildfire in Southern California. We're following the latest for you on the line fire, which is burning fast and forcing evacuations. And Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are getting ready to square off in Philadelphia tomorrow night as new polling shows the race is tighter than ever in some key battleground states. This is CBS News 24/7. We begin this hour in Kentucky, where police are searching a wooded area for a man they consider armed and dangerous. Now, this wanted man is accused of shooting at a dozen cars on a highway over the weekend, sending at least 5 people to the hospital. CBS News correspondent Christian Benavides is live in the town of London, Kentucky. Christian, first, can you tell us what happened this weekend?
Well, Lindsay, officials believe that 32-year-old Joseph Couch may have planned this attack. Think about this. He bought the weapon, according to officials, the same day that the shooting took place. He allegedly was aiming at vehicles on busy Interstate 75 and ended up shooting 12 vehicles. There are 5 people who were struck, including an individual who was shot in the face. Now, officials say that all of those individuals are expected to recover. At this point, there is an intensifying manhunt. We are on day 3 of this manhunt, and today, Monday, schools are closed. Parents are worried about what's happening here. Clearly, this happening on the heels of the school shooting in Georgia. So everyone here truly on edge about what's currently happening. Officials had about 40 to 50 officers throughout the weekend searching a heavily wooded area about 9 miles north from here. Officials say that this wooded area may have been chosen. It may have been, as I mentioned, they believe that he may have planned all of this and he may have chosen that location because of that heavily wooded area. Officials tell me that there are caves there are tunnels, it is rugged terrain. They've been searching for him for 3 days. They're unable to search once it gets dark because it is such rugged terrain. So the search is resuming at this point. Initially, the sheriff's office was leading the investigation. Now you've got Kentucky State Police. They're saying they're not going to hold any press conferences until they have an update.
So, Christian, you mentioned the community is on edge, understandably so. What are law enforcement officials telling people? I mean, are schools still open in the area? Can people just simply go out and walk their dogs?
In the immediate area, there are multiple school districts that have chosen to close as this search is ongoing. They are telling people to lock their doors. You got to remember, I mean, this is a rural community. It is not unusual to keep your doors unlocked, to have acres and acres of land. So that's why they're urging people to be vigilant, to do things they wouldn't normally do. Earlier today, we stopped by a coffee shop. We spoke to some folks that were there. One man telling me that he feels that everyone is sort of just looking over their shoulder and sort of on edge. He said that he doesn't let fear get to him, and that's sort of a sentiment that I've heard from multiple people here, that it's not fear, it's just this extra sense of awareness of what's going on. The coffee shop owner said that she was struggling to figure out whether or not she would open her doors today. Ultimately, she decided to open her business. There are some businesses that are not open. As I mentioned, schools are closed. But she decided to open because she's around the corner from the sheriff's office, and she said she wanted to be open for law enforcement and for those first responders that are out there searching for the suspect. Let's take a listen.
Typically, I'm not one that is frightened easy. I'm usually very strong-willed and strong-minded, and I don't even live close to where this is happening, but I have been very uneasy since. You know, I have a small child at home myself. My husband is a truck driver. He's away in Dallas, Texas right now, so it's been very unsettling, to say the least.
So that's the sense that you're getting from so many folks here, everyone on edge, hoping that this comes to a resolution quickly.
Okay, Christian Benavides, thank you so much. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are preparing to face off in their first presidential debate tomorrow. It comes as new CBS News polling shows an extremely tight race in three crucial states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. CBS News campaign reporter Aaron Navarro joins us now. Aaron, Harris released a new ad aimed at Trump ahead of the debate. What do we know about that and how she's preparing for tomorrow?
Lindsay, good to be with you. I'll start with that ad that features former Trump administration officials, including former Vice President Mike Pence, outlining why they believe that Trump is, quote, a threat to democracy and unfit for office. This ad was released, of course, after the weekend where you saw Liz Cheney and former Vice President Dick Cheney endorse Vice President Harris and her campaign. In terms of debate prep, she is here in Pittsburgh with a close group of advisors. We know that former Hillary Clinton aide Philip Rines is playing the role of Trump, even dressing as him as they begin their mock debates. Their strategy is to, quote, push Trump's buttons, but also lean into policy contrast between Harris and former President Trump.
Aaron, the two campaigns have been going back and forth over the rules for weeks. What did they agree upon?
The Harris campaign for weeks had been pushing for a hot mic situation, an unmuted microphone throughout the entire debate. Trump's campaign seemed to signal that they would pull out, saying that they agreed to the same rules as the CNN debate, where the microphone was muted for the person whose turn it was not to speak. The Harris campaign kind of gave up on that as ABC decided to keep the same rules and keep muted microphones throughout that debate. Sources with the Harris campaign tell CBS News that they believe it puts them on the back foot. They think that it shields viewers from Trump's interruptions and that she can't have a, quote, earnest interaction between Harris and Trump.
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Campaign reporter Olivia Rinaldi joins us now with more on Trump's campaign. Olivia, how is Trump preparing, if he is?
Yeah, good morning, Lindsay. You hear my colleague Aaron there talking to the great lengths that Vice President Harris is going to prep for this debate, even having an aide dress up as Trump. Trump campaign tells me they are not doing anything of that sort, not having anyone dress as Harris, and instead he's taking this very informally. He's having these policy discussions. They're basically blocks on the calendar where Trump is making these informal sort of phone calls, conversations with aides, friends, people who are around him. What do you think about this policy? How should I approach this? We do know that Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democratic representative from Hawaii, is someone who has been talking with Trump. She is someone who has appeared on a debate stage with Vice President Kamala Harris before. So Trump has been leaning into that a little bit and talking to her about perhaps the ways that she had attacked Harris previously, revisiting that 2019 debate between the two of them, or 2020 debate, rather. So a lot of these conversations happening more on the informal side from the Trump campaign rather than a structured form of debate prep.
And Nikki Haley was on Face the Nation yesterday, and she said that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance should stick to policy points. I want to play a clip of that.
The substance is cutting taxes, making housing more affordable, immigration, national security. That's the substance. The style is, no, it is not helpful to talk about whether women have children or whether they don't. It's not helpful to say any of those things that are personality driven or anything else. I have said that, and I will continue to say to Republicans, stop it. That's not helpful. If you want to talk about things, stick with policy.
Look, Trump is known for going off script, verbally attacking his opponents. He jokes about advisors telling him this, and he's said at a rally, goading supporters, should I stick to the issues? And they seem to enjoy the attacks, at least anecdotally at those rallies. But how are voters responding to his attacks against Harris from a polling perspective?
Well, you hear, Ambassador Haley talking there about they would rather see policy discussions. Some in the Republican camp would rather see those policy discussions than the personal attacks. I can tell you of the voters I've spoken to at Trump rallies, they enjoy those personal attacks against Harris. But it's really the key suburban women that they're trying to not, turn away with some of these discussions, some of the ways that they're talking about women. You hear Haley talking there about Senator Vance's previous comments about childless cat women, all of this to say that some Republicans in that camp have told them and advised the Trump campaign to focus more on policy rather than the personal attacks, because that's how you're going to get those key voting blocks, those women that you desperately need to turn out for you come November.
Olivia, thank you so much. We're going to have full coverage of the first debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump on Tuesday, September 10th. It's hosted by ABC News, but you can watch the debate right here on CBS News 24/7. Pre-show coverage begins on America Decides at 5 p.m. Eastern. A fast-growing wildfire in Southern California has quadrupled in size. So this is called the Line Fire. It's burning out of control in the San Bernardino Mountains east of Los Angeles, and thousands of people have had to flee their homes as firefighters battle not just the flames, but also triple-digit heat. California's governor has declared a state of emergency. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Rick Montanez is in San Bernardino. Hey, Rick, what's the status on the evacuations?
Yeah, Lindsay, there are tens of thousands of people in these evacuation zones. And these are a lot of mountain communities, so they're difficult to get in and out of, especially if we start seeing road closures. And we've seen some of that already. There are communities that are also in evacuation warning zones where they're telling people there to gather their belongings, prepare to leave. If they know it will be difficult to get out, they want them to just leave now because these flames have really burned out of control over the weekend. Thunderstorms, wild winds have fanned the flames in all directions, making it very dangerous.
So what can you tell us about those conditions and whether any changes are expected?
Well, we're looking today at triple-digit temperatures. Firefighters now in their 5th day of this fire. So they've been on 24-hour shifts where they work for 24, they're off for 24, and it's very difficult for them because they're dealing with such extreme heat. And they also tell me that the brush has dried out that much more over the last few days. So the fuel is ripe for just burning very quickly. But we are looking at a change in the weather pattern, but that won't happen until after today. And I've got to tell you, seeing the weather, or the fire, I should say, grow over the past few days, it just takes hours for it to explode in size. So really, there's no telling what today could bring, even though relief from the heat is expected over the next few days.
Wow. And Rick, we were just watching live aerial photos of that fire just scorching that mountainside. Real quick, do we know anything about what may have caused this?
You know, that's one thing that they have not said just yet. On Friday, I was covering this. I was at the spot where they said the fire originated from, and I can tell you it was right off the side of a road. It burned in some brush and then went up that mountainside. But the exact cause for that, still unclear.
Okay, Rick, thank you. You and your crew stay safe as well. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a look at the national forecast. Just really bad conditions fueling that fire, Grant.
Oh, Lindsay, it's like a tinderbox out there. You know, you've already got the dry conditions, and then you throw on top of it near record high temperatures, and the conditions are just like they were talking about, ripe for these fires, not only to start, but then the spread rapidly because of these gusty conditions. Walk over here with me because it really is centered over the western half of the United States, really from the Rockies westwards, where we have 20 million people underneath some sort of either fire or heat alert today. Excessive heat warning down into the L.A. area in Southern California. Temperatures approaching 100 degrees. 102 is the record in Los Angeles today. Meanwhile, you have all these other places underneath either red flag warnings or fire weather watches because of those dry and breezy conditions that could just fuel not just the fires that have already started and are burning uncontrolled in some places, but then continue to spark more fires. So concerns there across the western half of the United States. But then you have all the smoke associated with all these fires. Obviously, the concentration of the worst smoke and the poorest air quality is over the Pacific Northwest and then back into California and portions of Nevada. But watch as we go throughout the next several days. That smoke is going to spread into the upper Midwest. It's going to head into the Great Lakes states. Many places from the Dakotas into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and even Michigan and as far south as Kentucky could see some of that visible smoke in the air as we go through the next several days. In the meantime, the complete opposite side of the coin, we've got the tropics to watch. A couple of areas of concern and a developing tropical system in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. We could have Tropical Storm Francine, Lindsay, by the end of the day today. We'll talk more about the potential there here coming up in just a few minutes.
Okay, appreciate it, Grant. Thank you. Congress returns to Capitol Hill this week after an extended break. Coming up, you may get deja vu. We're talking about another government funding fight when we are just 3 weeks ahead of a potential shutdown. We'll be right back. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Time is ticking for congressional leaders to come up with a plan to fund the government. If a deal isn't reached in the next 3 weeks, critical services could come to a standstill and some employees could have to keep working without pay. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland is on Capitol Hill. Scott, it feels like deja vu. Will this funding of the government be their main focus when Congress goes back, and will it come down to the wire again?
I think the answer to both is yes, in part because a few moments ago, the House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries shared a letter with colleagues obtained by CBS News that calls what the Republicans are planning to vote on this week unserious and unacceptable, which dampens the prospects of any bipartisan coalition coming together to end this dispute early. So with 21 days left till September 30th, it seems clear they're going to use most of those 21 days to get past this hurdle. Here are the sticking points. The House Republican plan to fund the government includes a provision that would make unlawful federally undocumented immigrants voting in federal elections. That is already illegal. That does not happen. And to ban it, as a political message, Democrats say, just fuels conspiracy theories about the 2020 election and has the risk of disenfranchising documented immigrants from voting. That's one issue. But also, how long do you want this thing to go? How long do you want to temporarily extend the government, through December or through March 28th? Republicans want to go all the way to the end of March to give the new president a chance to shape federal spending. And Lindsay, Democrats with whom I'm speaking would like to do this only through December, where they can have another crack at funding priorities, not the least of which is rebuilding that bridge toppled in Baltimore.
Also, what we're monitoring today, Scott, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, they're going to release their 3-year investigation into the Afghanistan withdrawal today. What are we expecting to learn?
I expect that late in the afternoon today. I know that members of the Democratic Party, including the White House, were briefed on this or given some version of this yesterday in advance of today's release. This is a Republican-authored investigation. It's been years in the making. It is expected to be blistering with its criticisms of the final days of that withdrawal and how the Biden administration navigated the pullout. Republicans have been critical ever since that pullout, saying it should have been and could have been done better, safer, without the loss of life of Americans. But also, I think Republicans are going to make this argument when the report is released that the failures in Afghanistan emboldened China to be more aggressive with its posturing in Taiwan, emboldened Russia to encroach further in Europe. And that's a message they're going to echo again tomorrow, Lindsay, when House Republicans have a gold medal ceremony, along with Democratic leaders, for the 13 Gold Star families touched by Afghanistan. They're doing all this over the next 24 hours. Democrats would say it is craven politically to do so between Labor Day and Election Day, when it could have been done so much sooner.
All right, Scott, thank you. Venezuela's opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez is in Spain seeking asylum after Venezuela's disputed election. Gonzalez arrived in Madrid yesterday on a Spanish Air Force plane. A warrant for his arrest was issued in Venezuela after incumbent Nicolas Maduro claimed victory in July's election. An opposition party official said Gonzalez fled because, quote, his life was in danger. Mourners grieved the life of a Turkish-American woman who was killed in the West Bank last week, just hours ago. Officials, activists, and the Palestinian people gathered for a procession to say goodbye to Ahsanar Aghi. The 26-year-old recent graduate came to the West Bank to support the Palestinians protesting an Israeli settlement. The Israeli military clashed with demonstrators and Aghi was shot in the head. The White House says it's deeply disturbed by her death and her family is calling for an independent investigation. Let's bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, the U.S. is still trying to broker some sort of ceasefire agreement. Where do things stand?
Yeah, Lindsay, you know, when we spoke last week, there had been progress. Certainly the State Department was suggesting that, Antony Blinken himself. However, over the weekend, it looks like both sides are pulling back from that. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in an interview, said there's not a deal in the making. His words, unfortunately, it's not even close. And any suggestions that a deal is in the making is entirely inaccurate. At the same time, Hamas has put new hurdles up, new demands, saying that in exchange for the Israeli hostages that they're holding, they want the release of prisoners who are now serving life sentences, and that's just not going to happen. So you've got Yahya Sinwar, who's really playing a zero-sum game. He's literally fighting for his life. And as far as Benjamin Netanyahu is concerned, he's fighting for political survival. So we have taken several steps back in terms of trying to get this deal across the line.
While we have you, the West is accusing Iran of supplying weapons to Russia. What do we know about this?
Yep. So these reports first came out of Ukrainian officials saying Iran has been seen in the Caspian Sea providing these short-range ballistic missiles. That's important. It's around 100 miles is the range. So that's put cities like Kharkiv and Sumy in the line of fire, including defense positions along there. So these are significant weapons. It also allows the Russians to use their longer-range weapons, who travel very fast and are hard to intercept. As a matter of fact, really, the Patriots are only capable of doing that, striking deeper into Ukraine. At the same time, I've just come back from Ramstein over the weekend. That was the Ukrainian contact group. President Zelensky was there. And now we've had 24 of these contact groups. He's only gone to 2 of them. It's important. So the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was there. The Joint Chiefs of Staff was there. And Zelensky was asking for long-range weapons and the ability to use them for what he called deep strikes inside Russia. Even Ukrainian allies and American allies have said, yes, they need to get the permission to do that, weapons like ATACMS. However, the defense secretary said the Ukrainians have got plenty of their own weapons to hit these targets. In terms of the ATACMS, they have a range of about 300 kilometers, 200-something miles. And the Russians have pulled back their glide bombs into airfields that they're out of reach of the ATACMS. But there is growing pressure, mostly from the Ukrainians, to say, look, we need longer-range weapons, and we need to be allowed to hit targets inside Russia. After that meeting, Zelensky went to another meeting in Italy, and he said, I don't know whether people think we're going to hit the Kremlin. We're hitting strategic targets inside Russia. That's what we're putting forward. But the defense secretary, at least now, won't budge.
Interesting. All right, Charlie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are learning new details about the days and hours leading up to the deadly high school shooting in Georgia. Coming up, what information was flagged about the suspect by family members? You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Here is a look at some of the top stories we're following. Firefighters rescued a man stuck in a tunnel in Newbury Park, California. A call came in yesterday to Ventura County firefighters about an adult with special needs who may have become stuck in a pipe tunnel. Firefighters were able to locate the man and pull him free. He's in the hospital in serious but stable condition. Family and friends said a painful goodbye to a missing woman who was found dead in Missouri. Police found Delisha Evans dead in the car belonging to her boyfriend, Ryan Phillips, who was identified as the primary suspect in her disappearance. Police engaged in a shootout with Phillips after his vehicle was spotted by Missouri state troopers. Phillips was killed. Police are still investigating the cause of Evans' death. A candlelight vigil was held last night in Georgia for the 4 victims killed in last week's mass shooting at Appalachia High School. Hundreds attended the memorial at the school's football stadium. Students at a neighboring high school signed a poster that they will give to Appalachia students when they return to class. Other schools in the district resume tomorrow. There is not a set time for the students at Appalachia to return. And we're learning new details about the investigation into the shooting. Let's bring in CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman, who's in Winder, Georgia. Mark, what are we learning about the actions of the suspect's family prior to the shooting?
Hey, Lindsay, what we're learning is that the family really had the sense that something was wrong with this kid, that he was acting, his behavior was off, and they were worried about him. The grandmother, the day before the shooting, so that would have been last Tuesday, went to the school to talk to the school about her grandson's behavior. And then on the Wednesday morning, the day of the shooting, the mother received a text from her son saying, "I'm sorry, Mom." And the mother right away called the school to say, "Listen, we have a real emergency here. Go find him." And they went looking for him but they didn't find him in time. By the time someone spotted him, he was standing in the hallway with the AR rifle and was starting to open fire. So in the minds of a lot of people here, Lindsay, there were potentially a series of missed opportunities to try to prevent this. And of course, the community's down just living with the horrific consequences of what happened last Wednesday.
Mark, are questions being asked of the school and the district about why the school wasn't placed in lockdown while they were trying to find him?
Well, the school, I don't know if they're asking that question in particular. If you'll recall, as soon as the gunshots, as soon as he was spotted with a gun, the gunshots started ringing out. The lockdown was almost instantaneous. They have these new ID cards that essentially have a panic button, and several dozen teachers pressed them right away. And so the response time was exceptional. That's number one. But whether they had enough to go on to think to themselves, okay, this is a potential crisis worthy of a lockdown, that part of it is unclear. I mean, I don't know. We don't know what it is exactly the mother told them, other than we think this is an emergency. But how they interpreted that word emergency, what action they decided to take beyond looking for that child in an algebra class, I really don't know.
We know the suspect faces 4 counts of murder. His father faces second-degree murder, among other charges. When are the suspects due back in court?
Also unclear. Also unclear. What we do know is that they're being held without bond, both of them. Neither of them asked for bond. We do know that they are now aware of the charges against them. They, in theory, could be spending years in the criminal justice system, depending, of course, on the disposition of their eventual cases. This is going to be a long period of the legal process playing itself out, just as this is going to be a long period of grieving in this community. I mean, there are people here, there were more vigils last night, and you can just tell these people in this community feel battered by what's happened here. They are distraught. Some of the shock is gone, but the grieving goes on in earnest.
Okay. Mark Strassman, thank you. We are monitoring evacuations from the fast-spreading wildfire in Southern California. More than 17,000 acres have already burned in the San Bernardino Mountains. This is east of Los Angeles. It's forced mass evacuations, and smoke from the fires could pose another threat for millions of people. I want to bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. Grant, how is the heat not only impacting the fire conditions, but efforts to contain it?
Well, you know, Lindsay, you joke about how you say, oh, it's the heat out there, but it's a dry heat, right? And that's the thing. Temperatures are soaring as we go into this afternoon. Places like Los Angeles are reaching the triple digits, starting the day with temperatures near 72 degrees. But that dry heat is what's just sucking any sort of moisture out of any of that fuel on the ground. So if there is a fire that sparks or a fire that's already started and you get a little breeze, and those fires are just going to spread more rapidly and be harder and harder to control. Head over here with me. Let's talk about these high temperatures across Southern California today, even into places like Phoenix, where it is going to be very hot this afternoon. You're talking about near record high temperatures, maybe not quite getting the record in Los Angeles today, but a forecast high of 99 degrees is very hot. You got Las Vegas at 103, 108 degrees, and Phoenix all along California, even as far north as Sacramento, in the upper 90s. Meanwhile, Medford, Oregon, temperatures are in the mid-90s this afternoon. LA does see some relief. It starts tomorrow, though, so temperatures a little bit cooler with highs near 89 degrees tomorrow, and then some 70s on tap as we go through the middle of the week. So some relief there. But again, it's not just the heat, but it's also those dry and breezy conditions. Several other places from Nevada all the way north into portions of Idaho seeing fire weather, from red flag warnings to fire weather watches. 20 million people either underneath a fire or some sort of heat alert across the area today. Meanwhile, we've got some activity picking up in the tropics. Couple of areas to watch, 60% chance of development across the central Atlantic. But we are keeping an eye on now potential tropical cyclone 6 in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Watch here. This system likely becomes Tropical Storm Francine later on today. It has the winds. It just doesn't have the organization yet to technically be a tropical storm. It will likely become one, if not today, certainly by tomorrow. We are expecting it to gradually strengthen as it tracks north, likely becoming a hurricane by Wednesday as it hugs the Texas coast, likely makes landfall somewhere near Louisiana as we go through the second half of the week. But the wind isn't the main story with this storm system. It's going to be the rainfall as it tracks up the Mississippi Valley as we go through the second half of the week into the weekend. Rainfall totals are going to be pretty heavy. In fact, flood concerns are a real threat all along the Texas coast, but more so into the Louisiana coast, where some places could see close to a foot of rainfall just in a matter of days as the system continues to slowly move to the north. So keeping an eye on the tropics, keeping an eye on those fire conditions, and then the eastern half of the United States actually dealing with very nice weather, pleasant conditions all across the Ohio Valley, back into the Central Plains and Northeast, looking at highs at least near, if not slightly cooler than normal, with those hot and fiery conditions across California, with very warm conditions spreading north into portions of western Montana. Lindsay, back to you.
Okay, Grant, thank you. Well, just about every powerful storm that hits the United States is usually followed by a call to the insurance company. But as the number of storms increase, so does the cost of that coverage. CBS News Minnesota's Adam Duxter takes a closer look.
Well, most of us see a storm as downed trees and power outages.
I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that the insurance market's a challenge right now.
Aaron Cocking sees dollars, cents, and an unrelenting trend.
The price that we're paying now for our insurance premiums is kind of the direct price that we're paying as a result of climate change. The wind that we're having, the hail that we're having, kind of on an unprecedented level over the last handful of years, has just not allowed insurers to catch up.
The result, insurance companies down money 6 of the last 7 years and charging homeowners more to cover it.
We've seen premium increases 20 and 30% per year. They're going to have to continue that trend in order for them to make money.
Insurance expert Mark Kolda says companies are now finding other ways to cut costs.
We've seen that insurance companies are walking back their coverage. They're either leaving the market, they're making it more difficult for policyholders to get their policies, or they are taking a look at the policies and taking back benefits that they used to provide to consumers.
And now in Minnesota, twice as many complaints from homeowners to the state over out-of-pocket costs and denied claims. And with no sign these storms will stop anytime soon, both men say this story should be a sign to read your policy and potentially shop around. Adam Duxter, WCCO News.
Funeral services will be held this afternoon for professional hockey player Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matt. The pair were hit by a suspected drunk driver in southern New Jersey just one day before their sister's wedding. CBS News Philadelphia reporter Nikki Dementri is outside the church in Media, Pennsylvania, where the service for the brothers will begin at noon. Nikki, what can you tell us about just the outpouring of support for the Gaudreau family?
Lindsay, I can tell you, as you mentioned, that funeral is just about to be underway in about an hour or so here in Media. And that outpouring of support really has only grown since this tragic incident happened in South Jersey. It was over Labor Day weekend. As you mentioned, the two brothers were hit and killed by that suspected drunk driver just on the weekend of their little sister's wedding. It was supposed to be a joyous time for this family, right? Now they're having to bury two of their loved ones. Yesterday, at visitation at a nearby funeral home, we saw hundreds come out to pay their respects for the family and the loved ones of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. They waited in line for hours, and we're expecting about the same here today. Now, we talk about different memorials that have happened and different things that have happened. At the hockey rink in South Jersey, where the brother's father is the hockey director, there's been a growing memorial ever since this all happened. In the days and weeks, we've seen pictures put there and flowers and hockey sticks, all the way from little youngsters all the way up to grown fans as well. We are expecting today the NHL commissioner to be here, as well as the Columbus Blue Jackets in attendance. Now, again, this is a private funeral, so it's family and close friends. However, it will be live streamed, and CBS Philadelphia will be carrying that live stream once everything begins at noon. But really, it's just a sad and solemn day out here as people are coming together to pay their respects for these hockey giants that we lost much too soon.
Nikki, thank you. A typhoon destroyed a busy bridge in Vietnam that sent cars plunging into the river below. We're going to have details on the search for missing drivers. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Flooding in Vietnam from Typhoon Yagi has caused a bridge to collapse. Rushing water also swept away a bus. The storm has been blamed for at least 59 deaths. 9 people died when the typhoon made landfall Saturday before it weakened into a tropical depression. At least 50 others have died in floodwaters and landslides. Officials say it's the strongest typhoon to hit Vietnam in decades. Pope Francis landed in East Timor today, a country with one of the largest Catholic populations in the world. As CBS News' Anna Matrenga reports, this comes as hundreds of thousands are expected to attend a mass led by the Pope.
When Pope Francis arrived in Dili, these streets were teeming with people ready to welcome him. This is a monumental occasion for this country, the most Catholic state in the world after the Vatican. About 98% of Timorese are Catholic, and the church has a very strong influence here, having played a key role in the country's struggle for independence. But it has also been plagued with sex abuse scandals, reaching the very top of its hierarchy. The former head of the Timorese Church, Nobel Peace Prize winner Bishop Carlos Belo, was restricted from ministry by Francis in 2020 for sexually abusing young boys. Many here still consider Belo an independence hero. In his first speech in East Timor, Francis alluded to sex abuse, saying, "We're all called to do everything possible to prevent every kind of abuse for all young people." He also praised East Timor for its peaceful and democratic development and urged its leaders to continue focusing on the common good. Francis arrived here from Papua New Guinea, a country with a rich cultural diversity, very much on display during his visit. On Sunday, the Pope traveled deep into the jungle on an Australian military transport plane to personally deliver medicines, clothing, and toys to one of the poorest, most remote areas of the world. Lindsay, the Pope appears to be holding up well despite the hectic schedule that he's been adhering to. This is the longest trip of his papacy. He'll spend 3 days here before moving on to the last stop of the trip, Singapore.
Anna, thank you. We want to take you now to New York City, where the firefighters union is discussing illnesses related to September 11th. This has been an ongoing fight for nearly 2 decades. Let's watch our CBS New York coverage.
Felt sick in December, got tested January 2nd because he didn't want to take off on New Year's Eve, make someone else work, and he passed away on March 16th, and he was in his mid-40s. So the cancers that we get when they affect us, they're aggressive.
That was this past year?
This was 6 years ago, Tommy Phelan. He went 4 months from running a sub-4-hour marathon to dying of lung cancer.
And how does the union assist these members?
Well, right, as you see, we're fighting for the health care for these members, but the union can only do so much. Usually it's the firehouses that pick up the slack and see to it that the family's cared for. The Fire Family Transport does a phenomenal job getting getting family members to visit the members in the hospital, take that burden off them of where they park. The FDNY also has Family Assistance Unit, which does a tremendous job. The union's role in this is usually relegated to trying to get things passed to aid financially, but the FDNY is a tremendous family, and everyone helps out when we know one of our members is sick and dying.
Has the problem with the funding been that there was never enough to begin with, or that as more firefighters get sick, the cost of the healthcare balloons, or both?
Well, the cost of the healthcare continually goes up based on the number of people in the program. It's not just the FDNY. It's everyone that was below Canal Street in the year after 9/11. Right now, there's over 130,000 people in the World Trade Center healthcare program. There's going to reach a point in time where it levels off, but they haven't gotten there yet.
The original bills hadn't necessarily been passed with inflationary costs, plus with the dramatic improvement in cancer research. Every time a new drug comes out, it is usually, much more costly than the drugs that exist currently in the market. So with every advancement, along with every additional cancer that gets added to the program, it was just an exponential cost the original bills couldn't account for.
Are you expecting this latest bill will take in even more inflation in terms of the numbers that are seeking healthcare assistance and the cost?
Senator Gillibrand said that she'd hoped that this would be the last time we would ever have to ask for funding, and that would carry us to the 2090 expiration date of those members covered by the Health Care Act.
Are you confident it's the last?
We have been listening to the United Firefighters Association holding a press conference in New York City. This is our CBS News New York coverage. That is the president of the association right now in the center of your screen, talking about this fund that helps with firefighters who responded. And that fund helps pay for treatment when they have what they're talking about, which is very aggressive diseases as a result of their actions and being there that day and what they inhaled. This has been an ongoing fight. Comedian Jon Stewart has testified in front of Congress trying to get more money for this fund. So that is what they are talking about today and asking for. We're going to continue to monitor this and bring you any news as it happens. We also want to bring you live pictures of the line fire as it torches parts of California. This is just about 60 miles east of L.A. in the San Bernardino County. Right now, of course, you see the terrain firefighters are up against. What you don't see, what you don't feel, is the heat that they're up against. We'll be right back. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Diamonds may be forever, but not all relationships are. Now, a Massachusetts court will have to decide who gets to keep the ring now that a wedding was called off. CBS News Boston's Paul Burton breaks down the arguments on both sides of the aisle.
The ring is either yours or it's mine.
It's supposed to be a symbol of love and commitment, but now a $70,000 engagement ring has become a bitter battle between a former couple and a case that has made its way to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court.
And award the engagement ring and wedding band back to Mr. Johnson.
According to court documents, Johnson bought the ring, one similar to this one, from Tiffany's in Boston, paying more than $70,000. Soon after, he called off the engagement because he says his bride-to-be was verbally abusive and thought she was cheating on him, which she denies.
She would have stayed. She would have stuck it out.
A trial court ruled in her favor, saying Johnson was at fault for calling off the engagement, and right now she gets to keep the ring. Johnson appealed the decision, and a Massachusetts appeals court ruled in his favor. Now it's up to the SJC to decide whether Massachusetts should follow other states where engagement rings are returned to the giver if an engagement is called off, regardless of who is at fault.
Who gets to keep the ring if we move to a no fault? Because the ring has been transferred in some respect.
So that if the marriage does not happen, the purchaser of the ring gets the ring back.
Why?
It's most equitable, Your Honor.
Arthur DeMillo is an independent appraiser and jeweler.
So my best understanding would be if the condition hasn't been met of the engagement, in other words, if the condition no longer exists, then the ring needs to be returned.
Shoppers in downtown Boston have varying opinions.
Oh, he called the wedding.
He called the wedding off.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would give it back. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
I mean, she should give the ring back. It's not yours. There's no wedding.
Well, I believe the ring belongs to her because he gave it to her as a gift.
It belonged back to the man.
Why do you say that?
Because it's canceled. Everything is over.
The decision now lies in the hands of the Massachusetts SJC. No word yet on when a ruling is expected. In Boston, I'm Paul Burton, WBZ News.
Interesting. Got a lot of people talking there. All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a look at the forecast. I don't know if you're going to touch this one.
No, I will stay a long way away from that one for sure. I'm a meteorologist. I'll talk weather. I'm not going to talk about rings and who owns what and at what point it becomes a gift. Whew. That's difficult there, though. I think probably give it back to the guy, right? The guy who bought it? I don't know. Again, I'll stay away from it. Let's talk weather here. Again, 20 million people underneath either a fire or heat alert out west. I mean, fire concerns are going to continue, even though portions of Southern California dealing with near triple-digit heat today. Meanwhile, very nice weather up across most of the eastern half of the United States. You got some rain and then flooding concerns from Texas all the way into the Louisiana coast as potential Tropical Cyclone 6 could become a tropical storm later today. Lindsay, back to you.
Grant, thank you. An encore of CBS Mornings is next. This is CBS News 24/7.